Is it ever okay to pause your retirement contributions, and what kind of impact does it have on your finances now and in retirement? Welcome, new and returning money buddies. Thank you so much for listening and tuning into today's episode of Financial Planning for Young Adults. I am so excited for today's episode because we're going to talk about something that most financial experts won't touch with a 10-foot pole. And it's whether you should pause your retirement contributions or not. Is it something you should do? When is it okay to do it? Is it ever okay? We're going to look at the uniqueness of all of our different situations with some great case studies today, but I want to help give some parameters and guidelines around when it might be okay and when it's not okay. I have a really fun episode lined up for you today, and today's story is going to cover how my wife and I have actually partially paused our retirement contributions in order to save for our adoption that I mentioned in the last episode. And then today's research is going to cover when you should and shouldn't pause, and we're going to get a lot deeper into the impacts on your long-term wealth if you do decide to pause your retirement contributions. And we're even going to touch on that question of paying off debt versus investing with some research today. And then the mini case studies are back. I have developed 4 different examples for us to learn from today. We're going to learn what happens if you pause, when you shouldn't pause, and much, much more. But today's episode is going to be a great one. But coming up next week, I have the very first guest on Financial Planning for Young Adults. So make sure to subscribe so you never miss a future episode. But let's keep this episode moving along and get into today's story. Today's story really stems a lot from our conversation last week about how life can change. And this was one particular situation where our retirement contributions may have to change due to our life changes. So to kick it off here, the main question that we had was, should we stop our retirement contributions for a different goal? Like I said last week's episode, go back and listen to it. It's going to dive into a whole lot more detail about how our life changed. But now that our life has changed, we suddenly need to save for an adoption, which can be very expensive. And we're also putting a ton of money into retirement contributions. So what do we do now that we have a different goal that requires a lot of money? We want to make sure to hit our adoption savings goal and avoid debt, but we also want to save for retirement. The conflict in these situations, let me just make sure you understand this, it's very real. The stress, it can be very heavy at times when it comes to saving money for our goals. And of course, it can be a situation where you're like, of course, you just have more money to throw at all these random goals, boo-hoo. But I want to acknowledge that the stress behind this can be real because you want to eventually spend your money and you want to do things with your money. So it's the age-old challenge of personal finance. Do you save for a near-term goal or do you save for a long-term goal? Can we do both? That's the big challenge we're facing. And you have probably felt this as well. Should you pay off debt? Should you pay off student loans? Should you save for retirement? Should you start putting $500 a month into an emergency fund? All sorts of different options are available. That's the real conflict and the real heavy emotion and stress that comes with the idea of mentioning, should I pause my retirement contributions? So how do you handle the conflict that arises in these different situations? How did my wife and I handle this? Well, we realized it was okay to pause. We accepted the fact that we were probably not going to be able to max out every single retirement account this year. But we ultimately ended up not pausing every single account, and I think that is the key piece. This whole pausing your retirement contributions idea does not have to be all or nothing. You don't have to completely stop contributing to retirement in order to do something different. You can still contribute some to retirement. We made sure that we were still in a place where we were going to get the employer match at my wife's work, and that's a key piece to know, and that's what we're going to talk about a lot in the research segment today, is how important that employer match truly is. But remember, let's go back to the idea that this doesn't have to be all or nothing. You can adjust your plan slightly as things change in order to hit a goal now, and then you can change it back. And that's the key thing that you're going to see in just one of today's case studies is the idea of having a commitment to resume retirement contributions. That's the key piece there, because is it okay to pause? Yeah, it might be okay to pause. Is it okay to stop contributing to retirement? That's where the line is drawn pretty hard in the sand. So all in all, just realize that putting in some effort to plan around this is going to make the results work out just fine. Everything's going to work out just fine. For us, between donations, potential tax deductions, everything's going to work out to make it so that we can bring more money into our life and accomplish our goals. And we're probably going to be able to potentially still max out our retirement accounts, since we have until April 15th to max out our IRAs. So we may come into some extra money or a bonus from work that would allow us to catch up on our savings. Things can ebb and flow, and that's okay. And again, this instance of a savings conundrum really helped us understand that personal finance is personal. And even though the conflict and stress are a big deal, and there's something that you need to take seriously and actually talk through and work together, especially if you're married, you need to make sure you're having these conversations, because it can be a real hang-up point if one of you wants to just contribute to retirement forever, even though you're not hitting your savings goals that are still important to both of you. You need to make sure you're having conversations around these sort of stressors and conflicts. Even though it's saving money, it can still be extremely stressful. And just remember, personal finance is personal. Things can change. You can slow down your retirement contributions now and then pick them back up in the future. It's okay if you do have to pause. And while pausing might not be something we ever really want to do unless we absolutely have to, I want to paint a picture for you of what might happen if you do decide to pause, or if you decide to stop contributing to retirement. But thank you so much for tuning into today's episode so far. Let's get into today's research segment and talk about the reality of how this is going to impact your financial situation if you do decide to pause your retirement contributions. Let's get into the research segment today and talk about this first article that says, here's why I paused my 401k contributions to prepare for a recession. So this is a common one that comes up in our lives, right? Things might be looking tumultuous in the stock market and you think, I need to pause my contributions so that I can wait it out and then I'll get back into it. But let's see what the article has to say about it. First quote here says, your 401k not only provides you with a benefit of tax-deferred growth, but you could also be missing out on employer match contributions. He said, moreover, when you halt the contributions, you reduce the money invested in the market, missing out on potential rebound gains if the market recovers. You're going to hear this idea get talked about a lot in today's research. You're going to miss out on those rebounding gains. And for those like each one of us, young and early in our careers, there's so much potential when you can buy the stock market when it's lower for those rebound gains that are going to be higher than your highest investments, but they're also going to make it so that those rebound gains on what you bought at a low point are even higher. And there are some case studies in one of the research articles that I found that are going to address what it's like to consistently keep investing through a market downturn. And I'll spoil it for you now. The person that keeps contributing wins. The next quote says, focus on building an emergency fund and a high yield savings to cover 3 to 6 months of living expenses. Now, this is something you should do right away. Make sure you're still getting the employer match, but before you start contributing more and more to your retirement accounts, having a 3 to 6 month emergency fund is a great idea. If you're single, push it maybe more towards 6 months. If you're married and you're both working, it could probably be more on the 3-month side. If you're married and only one spouse is working and one is staying at home, it might want to go back towards the 6-month side. So just figure out where your situation lies in one of those scenarios I just painted and choose an amount that feels right for you. And then consider adding more to your retirement contributions instead of pausing them. This next quote says, another smart move might be to set up an automatic resumption of contributions at a given date, knowing that it can always be paused again if needed. I love this idea. Set a date where you're going to resume your retirement contributions. I honestly bet you could ask your HR department to hold on to your paycheck contribution form for a certain effective date, and I bet they would be willing to do it. Or you fill out the form, put it in an email, and schedule the email for a specific date. That way your retirement contributions will automatically resume. But this gets at the idea of just start saving into your retirement account and your lifestyle is going to adjust and figure it out. Start with a higher percentage than you ever think you could, and then you can always scale it back, because 9 times out of 10, you're going to be just fine with the higher contribution amount, and it's going to end up being okay in the long run, and your lifestyle will adjust. The next quote here says, putting contributions on hold while a 401k is losing money leaves you with fewer dollars that can benefit from the eventual rebound. Not only is it tough to get the timing right for a market recovery, but keeping money on the sidelines means betting against the odds. Statistically speaking, the market goes up more than it goes down. Watching a 401k lose money isn't fun to live through, but eventually things will turn around. It is flat out impossible to get the timing right. You're not going to be able to pause your retirement contributions and perfectly start them back up just in time, because guess what? One, there's delays in getting your 401k contributions set up because HR departments have to wait till your next pay cycle, or maybe they even just barely missed the deadline to get it updated for your next paycheck, so you have to wait till the next one. And by then the market might rebound completely. So not only are you dealing with delays just from a personnel side and a form and paperwork side of things, it's also just impossible. If you manage to do it, you just got lucky. Thinking that you're going to be the one person that's going to time the market perfectly is setting yourself up to fail. And that's going to be a great reason to never resume your contributions, because you're always, like in one of today's case studies, going to feel like you are on the precipice of some sort of drop or some sort of recession that you're just waiting a little bit longer to get in. And it's not going to turn out well for you. So just be like the rest of us and be average and make sure you're regularly getting those contributions into your retirement account. Even the people that get paid hundreds of thousands of dollars or maybe even $1 million a year can try to do this, and they're not going to figure out how to do it. You and I surely aren't going to figure out how to time the market and beat all the supercomputers that are trying to time the market. So just make it simple and keep contributing regularly, and don't try to gamify it or get lucky with your timing by pausing your contributions and resuming them at hopefully the perfect time, because it's just not worth it. The next quote says, if an investor decides to pause or stop contributions, they're not only slowing their own compounding progress, but they're leaving the employer match, which can be thought of as free money, on the table. The best plan of action for long-term investors is to stay the course with their retirement savings efforts. Again, the employer match is a huge piece. It's what can supercharge your retirement contributions. You never want to leave it on the table if at all possible. The employer match is something that you're going to hear every financial guru, expert, or talking head mention that you need to get. That's because it's part of your compensation. It's money that is being given to you for working there, so make sure you're getting it. But that does it for the first article today. This next one I want to talk about is 4 signs that you may need to pause your 401k contributions. And I wanted to talk about this one to give you some examples of when might it be okay? What are some situations where I may need to think about pausing my retirement contributions? I'm going to list all 4 of them here real quick, and then we're going to dive into each one specifically. 1, your income has dropped. 2, you're falling behind on credit card debt. 3, your employer suspended matching contributions. And 4, you might lose your job entirely. And then it mentions to pause contributions only in an emergency. You shouldn't pause them just because you feel like it, right? So let's talk about that first one. If your income has dropped, I would still challenge you to see if you can stick it out. And honestly, your lifestyle is going to adjust. And this is where having a percentage-based contribution amount can be super helpful, because if you have a 3% contribution and your income does go down because of a job change or whatever it might be, you're still only going to put away 3%, which is naturally going to be a smaller amount. So it's not like you're going to suddenly have way less income. It's still going to keep up with it. So make sure to use percentages there, because if you had a $500 contribution and your income went down, you could see how that ratio would impact it a lot more. But we all need to give ourselves a little bit more credit to be a little bit more resilient. You can adjust, and your lifestyle will honestly automatically adjust, and you won't have to deal with it. But the next one is racking up credit card debt. And if you're racking up credit card debt, you might just be living beyond your means, and adjust that first. Adjust your spending first. Consider tracking your spending to get a grip on where all your money is going, because you want to address living beyond your means first before you pause your retirement contributions. Because unless you're already contributing a massive amount of money to your 401k, it's not going to make a massive difference in your credit card debt. The thing that will make a massive difference in your credit card debt is to stop spending on a credit card and to control your spending and make sure to live within your means. That's a great way to reduce your spending and have money to put towards the debt each and every paycheck. And then the third one about suspending matching contributions. If your employer did suspend matching contributions, you probably don't want to stop contributing to retirement, but it may be a better idea to do it in an IRA instead of a 401k, because a 401k can tend to have some higher fees that are often negated by the employer match. But if that's not a factor, then it may be better to put money into the IRA first, because it can be a little bit easier, it's more direct, it doesn't have to go through payroll, but you don't want to stop contributing to retirement just because the employer match is gone. There are other places to contribute to retirement that you'll still want to take advantage of. And then to the last point of maybe losing your job, that feels a little bit risky to stop contributing to retirement unless you don't have some sort of an emergency fund and you know that a layoff is pending and it's imminent doom, right? Then maybe you need to use some of that retirement contribution to build up a little bit of a nest egg right away. But of course, your retirement contributions are going to stop if you do lose your job. That's why you have to have an emergency fund in place beforehand so that you're set up in a position to where you don't have to stop retirement contributions just because something came up. Because unless it's a huge emergency, you want to still make sure you're contributing regularly to your retirement contributions. And by emergency, I mean a personal and unique to you emergency, not some emergency in the stock market or some emergency in the economy. You'll still want to contribute to your retirement through all of that. Unless it's a unique and personal major emergency, keep your retirement contributions going. Because obviously your circumstances will be unique, but don't look at these articles as permission to stop contributing to retirement. Make sure you're actually looking at your own situation and realize the opportunity cost that stopping your retirement contributions can actually have on your long-term goals. The next article we're going to talk about is how to maximize your 401k employer match. First quote here says, failing to contribute enough to receive the full match is like leaving part of your paycheck on the table. Matching contributions have the potential to increase your retirement savings over time. Why? Well, it's because of the same power of compound interest that your regular contributions are able to grow with. Because people can retire on their own retirement contributions. You could retire through an IRA, right? You could retire through just regular savings into the stock market and letting it grow with time. But you can add even more power to your retirement by getting the matching contribution. It's a huge piece that's going to really just accelerate your retirement contributions. So what is the advice for new hires or those of us in the audience today, those of us young professionals? What do? Well, make sure you enroll immediately, contribute enough to get the full match, and understand vesting schedules. These are all great pieces of advice. I enrolled in my last 401k immediately, and by the time that I left, the money had essentially doubled because over half of the value in the account was just employer match and stock market growth. So if you can get in that account early and then you work there for 3 or 4 years and you're able to take advantage of the money that your employer's been putting in it and the stock market growth over that time. And I do want to touch on vesting schedules here because they can be something useful to understand, because there could be just a few days difference between you getting 60 or 80% or 20% or 40%, because typically the vesting schedule increases 20% every year that you're in the plan. So just make sure you're aware of that, because if you're going to quit right before your year anniversary, you may want to hold off and see if your next employer can wait until you hit that vesting schedule, because that can be a big deal and get you a nice chunk of change extra from that employer match. So even if you're moving jobs or changing careers, don't let the vesting schedule be the thing that stops you from doing it, but it's just something to consider and be aware of. But the biggest piece of advice here is to enroll early and get that company match right away, and just keep contributing money into your 401k or whatever retirement account you have available to you, because this next article is going to talk about why you shouldn't hit pause on your 401k. And this one's going to have some case studies for us to go over here. So make sure you check out the video on YouTube or Spotify to see what I have to share on screen. This article is really to test how a wait and see approach would fare compared to continuing to invest. The author of this article looked at 4 different market downturns: the early 2000s .com bubble, the 2008 market downturn, the coronavirus 2020 downturn, and the 2022 bear market. These are some great examples, both with more recent ones in 2020 and 2022, and then the earlier ones in the early 2000s and in 2008. These are going to be some great examples. And of course, you know where this is heading. The person who keeps investing ends up making a lot more money. But let's walk through these 4 different cases, and then we'll review the overall situation at the end. So let's get going here. Case 1. March 2000 to October 2002. An investor who started investing $500 a month in March 2000 and kept doing that throughout the turmoil in the early decade would have ended up with about $700,000 as of March 31st, 2025. The wait and see investor would have ended up with about $573,000. And then in case 2, in October 2007 to February 2009, an investor who started investing $500 per month in October 2007 and continued making consistent investments would have ended up with about $360,000 as of March 31, 2025, even after enduring the losses of 2020 and 2022. An investor who skipped out on making contributions until March of 2009 would have ended up with about $307,000. So that's a gap of about $53,000 just by putting in $500 a month. You can do the math, but that $500 a month does not equal $53,000. Case 3 of February and March 2020, the keep buy investor would have ended up slightly ahead by March 2025, even suffering through the downturns of 2022 and early 2025. Now, case 4 of 2022, the keep buying investor would have ended up with about $7,000 ahead by March 2025. And that's only going through about 10 months of investing. 500 times 10 is not $7,000. So that's where those market rebounds, even over a short time horizon, like 2022 to 2025, can still see thousands of dollars in gain. So now play that out over 20, 30 years, and you can see why investing through these downturns can be such a big deal. But now let's see the overview. So January 2000 to March 2025, and investors started making contributions of $500 a month in January 2000, paused the contributions during each of the 4 downturns that we just mentioned, and then resumed contributions after the market had bottomed out. But even with this seemingly ideal scenario, consistent contributions went out by a large margin. The consistent 401k contributor ended up with nearly $200,000 more than the stop and start. And the reason is that continuing to contribute means that there's more dollars available when the market rebounds, while hitting pause means the complete opposite, and you just keep getting in at all-time highs and market highs. So what we learned from this review is that $500 a month may not seem like a lot, but over the long time horizon and being able to consistently contribute through those downturns, that's what's going to end up making you rich. Compound interest through those downturns is a huge benefit, because imagine your other investments are here at $1,000, right? And then suddenly the market drops to $700. You're still investing through all that. And then it comes up to $1,200. Not only have you made money on the $1,000, but now your $700 investment has made even more money. That's where so much of the potential comes in to continue investing through these market downturns. Downturns are one of the greatest times of opportunity for anyone with a long time horizon. So for those of us young adults, we should see markets going down as a sale and a giant green flag to go out and buy more. It's honestly a great time to consider increasing your contributions if your job is secure, and avoid pausing them through those downturns, because that can be a time where you really make a lot of money. I hope you enjoyed this article reviewing some of the downturns and what it's like to continue investing through them. It can be a great way to make a lot of money. But now I want to close out the research segment with the age-old question: do I pay off debt or do I invest? Here's an article from Fidelity about how to choose. Their first quote is some key takeaways saying if the interest rate of your debt is 6% or greater, you should generally pay down debt before investing additional dollars towards retirement. This guideline assumes that you've already put away some emergency savings, you're capturing the full employer match. Remember, that is a key piece. Even before paying down debt over 6%, capture the full employer match. And make sure you've paid off all credit card debt. For many people, it generally makes sense to first pay down debt with an interest rate of 6% or greater. This assumes that you have at least 10 years before retirement, that you're investing in a portfolio that's at least 50% stocks, and that you're investing in a tax-advantaged account like a 401k or an IRA. But here's a key piece of information for you young adults that's going to be super helpful out the gate. Avoid high-interest debt right away. It can save you a lot of time and a lot of money when it comes to actually saving for retirement. This 6% rule, it could be a good rule of thumb, but of course it depends on your situation. If you already have a lot saved for retirement, then yes, it may be good to take a pause for a second and knock down some of that debt and get it out of your life. But if you have debt that's higher than 10 or 15% or it's credit card debt, then you may want to get out of that right away. That's the kind of debt that can be crippling on your long-term situation if you're just always making minimum payments on it and never able to actually get out of debt. So let me know in the comments how you feel about paying off debt versus investing. And I hope you enjoyed today's research and a review of some of the times that people think it's commonly okay to pause our retirement contributions. We also talked about why you shouldn't pause retirement contributions and some of the other situations that may make us consider pausing them. But the key piece is pause them. Don't stop them outright. I hope you enjoyed the research segment, and thank you for listening to today's episode of Financial Planning for Young Adults. I have some amazing mini case studies lined up for you next that's going to really help you get a great idea about some specific examples and scenarios where pausing may be a good idea and where pausing is a really bad idea. I'm excited to show you today's case study, so let's keep this moving. These upcoming 4 case studies are going to be awesome. I wrote up these mini case studies to help you see specific and different situations where it may and may not be okay to pause your retirement contributions. So let's get into case study number 1 with Sarah. We'll call her the strategic pauser. She's 27 years old, makes about $78,000 a year. And just to mention it, she does have student loans. The payments are manageable, so she just keeps making those payments. But her situation is that she's accumulated $8,000 in credit card debt at a 20% interest rate, some expensive car repairs, and a few months of overspending from her first job. Just like so many of us experience, this is what's left her in this credit card debt situation. Now, she was contributing 6% to her 401k to get the full employer match, But this credit card interest, it's eating her alive. Every single month, it feels like she's never going to be able to get ahead. So here's what Sarah did. It was a calculated decision, and she was able to pause her 401k contributions for 8 months. And here's the key thing. She paused it for a specific amount of time. She was able to get out of credit card debt in that time frame. But what made it work is that she had that specific date and she had the automatic contributions set to restart. But that's what made this whole scenario so good, is that it was automatically paused, it was automatically resumed, and the pause was treated as a temporary project rather than this big final decision that she was never going to contribute to retirement ever again. So yes, Sarah paid off $8,000 in 8 months, which was a big hurdle and honestly something she never really felt like she was going to be able to do. She thought she was destined to be in credit card debt forever now, right? Once you get in it, is there any way to get out of it? Yes, there is. But the key thing here is she talked with her HR department and set up a specific date for her retirement contributions to resume. And now 8 months later, she's back on track, eliminated a 20% interest charge. And now she has even more money as a part of her regular monthly cash flow than before. So now she's even considering contributing even more to her retirement to make up for those 8 months where she was paying off debt. And ultimately, she's going to be just fine. But this was a specific situation where some high interest debt was leaving this big looming cloud over Sarah, and she decided to take action with a pause, not completely stopping her retirement contributions, by knowing she had a specific date when she was going to resume her retirement contributions. And that's the key piece in this first story, is if you do decide to go the debt route instead of investing route, make sure you have a date where that debt payoff is done that you can resume saving towards retirement, because that's going to be the essential and most helpful piece throughout any situation you face, is make sure you have a specific time period allotted to whatever scenario you're trying to play out. Make sure the plan is intentional and temporary so that you can come back to your retirement contributions. But our next case study is about Marcus, the consistent contributor. Marcus is now 50, so this is someone that we can all look to as an example. He started at 22 years old, just like so many of us. He was making $52,000 a year. Now he makes $135,000 a year. But Marcus is like so many of us. He changed jobs multiple times. He switched jobs for better opportunities, better pay, or whatever it might be. There always may be a reason for us to change jobs, but that doesn't have to derail our financial plan and our plan to save for retirement. He had many 401k accounts. Some he rolled over, some he left there. That's a decision that can be made with each and every 401k. But he dealt with medical bills, helping out his family, making some upgrades to his lifestyle, really all normal things. Marcus lived a completely normal life. He lived an enjoyable life. He was able to live life even while saving for his retirement, which is the one thing that he always did consistently. Every single time, as soon as he got a new job, he signed up for the 401k. Sometimes his contributions were just enough to get that employer match that we all talk about so much. And then sometimes it was a bit more. When he got a raise, he always considered increasing his contributions and did it most of the time. But no matter what, he never paused his retirement contribution. Whether he increased it or maybe scaled it back just a little bit, there was always something going into his retirement accounts and into his 401k. So what happened? Well, now Marcus is sitting there at 50 years old. He's sitting there one afternoon at his desk, just getting back from his lunch break, and he pulls up his 401k and his rollover IRAs, and he realizes that these accounts have grown a lot. He runs some simple math with the 4% rule as a rule of thumb, and he realizes, I could retire. I could safely retire on this rule of thumb. So now he gets to get into the specifics, right, and figure out the actual math behind it. But that's when the emotions really hit him. That's when the behavioral side of money comes out. He realized he won. He's done with the supposed rat race or the grind, right? He is at a point where his consistent contributions paid off, and he's going to be able to retire 15 to 20 years earlier than most people. And even here, when the math is the thing that gets people over the hump to start thinking about early retirement, there's still so much more to this than math. There is so much more emotion and behavior behind this that's going to make this so exciting for Marcus and so exciting for each and every one of us as we continue to consistently contribute to our retirement savings. We're going to realize, just like Marcus, that we didn't get lucky. We didn't inherit a trust fund. Marcus was able to meet his early retirement goal because for 3 decades, he consistently put money into his 401k. He didn't have to live in deprivation. He didn't have to live in a forced poverty in order to actually be able to retire. He was able to live a normal and comfortable life. And now he's financially independent. So the key takeaway here from Marcus's story is that consistency beats perfection. whether he was able to increase his retirement contributions or had to scale them back sometimes, because guess what? Life happens and you might have to bring it down to just that minimum to get the employer match. But no matter what, Marcus was able to consistently contribute to his 401k, and he never stopped. He maybe never maxed out his 401k, but that doesn't matter because he consistently contributed to it. Time in the market beats timing the market. Getting that employer match is money that's just going to help continue and compound and supercharge your retirement and get us all to a point where we're able to retire early. This third case study is the type of person that I like to call the perpetual pauser, right? Ultimately, it just ends up being a big stop on your retirement contributions. And now this person, their name is Jason. They're 35 years old, and this case study is going to be looking ahead in the future a little bit, right? 3 years ago, Jason got worried about the AI tech bubble that we're all potentially worried about right now. Everyone was talking about how it was going to burst, just like the dot-com crash. He said the market felt overvalued, scary, and unpredictable. So Jason paused all of his 401k contributions, thinking he would wait for things to settle down, he'd wait for the bubble to pop, and for the market to restart and reboot so that he could then buy the dip and get back into his contributions. But he paused, and then he waited and waited and waited some more. This bubble that he was so worried about did burst, but not in the way that he expected it. It caused some turmoil in the market, right? But it didn't cause this massive drop or this scary recession that everyone was worried about. But Jason still felt like he was on the precipice of something happening. And this is the scary part when you get into pausing your contributions for some sort of market or economic event, is you never know when the next one is going to happen, and you're never able to predict when it'll happen, when it'll end, and when you should get back in. Because Jason realized maybe I should just wait a little bit longer for that market correction to happen. Maybe I should wait just a little bit longer for the political tension or for the next election, right? All these different big out of our control events. And guess what? Now Jason, that 3-year pause that he took, that's his new normal. Because now Jason, 3 years later, doesn't know what to do. He missed out on contributions. He missed out on the employer match. It's money he's never going to get back. He missed out on the compounding growth of the little bit of a dip and then the big return that the stock market probably made. His retirement account balance hasn't really grown much except for some market gains that was already there. He feels stuck. And this is one of the trickiest pieces because guess what? Starting to contribute to your retirement is never going to feel comfortable. But if you have paused your retirement contributions, use this as your sign to just go in and start it a little bit. Start with like 2 or 3%, something small. Because the pause that like Jason thought was supposed to protect him actually left him further behind and now more anxious than ever. Because market timing doesn't work. Temporary pauses will become permanent habits. And the right time to invest never feels perfect. So don't make a fear-based decision that could cost you years and years of progress. Make sure you're like Marcus in our last study, who keeps up that consistent and continual contribution to your retirement account. Don't look at bigger market events or political events or whatever might be going on in the world as a reason to stop saving for your retirement. Let the market and the economy do whatever it does. Just make sure you're consistently and regularly contributing. But I have one more case study that I want to touch on here, and this is a situation that so many of us find ourselves in right now. There's lifestyle inflation on one end from getting a new job and making more money. And then on the other side, there's actual inflation. Everything's getting so much more expensive. How do you juggle getting squeezed from both sides by inflation and actually stay contributing to your retirement account? So this last case study features Alicia. She's 29 years old. She just changed jobs about 6 months ago, and her salary went from $82,000 to $105,000, so a pretty solid jump. Her employer does offer a nice 6% match, but that big jump has led Alicia to start increasing her lifestyle, right? She had this salary bump. She has to upgrade her wardrobe for a new job. She is eating out more than ever. There's a whole lot of things coming on the lifestyle side of things from this new job that feels like she's making even less money. She got a nicer apartment, right? We've all felt these sort of things that are just tugging on our money. Even though we're making more, it doesn't really feel like it because it's all going right out the door to this new lifestyle that our job is bringing about. But then there's also real inflation that Alicia's feeling. Trips to the grocery store are costing more than ever. You put a couple things in the cart and it's $80, right? Everyone has felt both sides of this equation, the new job leading to lifestyle inflation and actual inflation just squeezing you. Coming from both sides, it can feel like double inflation, and that is extremely overwhelming for all of us. But for Alicia, she wasn't sure what to do because she got this newer, nice paying job. It had a nice 401k match. So she considered, should I pause my 401k contributions while my budget settles down and gets under control? Alicia says she doesn't feel like she can keep up. And having the extra money from the 401k contributions coming straight to her in her paycheck would be a huge benefit. So Alicia, and probably a lot of you listening, are wondering, what should you do if your budget feels tight with your retirement contributions? Well, my recommendation, don't pause your contributions. You'll end up like the last situation where you never get back to it, because choosing whether to invest is never going to feel perfect or right. It's always going to be a little bit challenging. But in this situation, I would encourage Alicia to review the situation and see what else can be done before touching retirement contributions. There's a whole wealth of opportunity that could happen here, right? There's maybe getting another job. That could be something. The first thing that may need to come into consideration is reducing spending. And also, if you just moved or just got a new job, there may just be some increased expenses that come with that transition that'll naturally go away over time. But the key thing to do is just to be careful with your lifestyle. Make sure it doesn't change too much permanently, because there may be some expenses that are going to naturally come back, because Alicia upgraded her wardrobe, but she probably won't need to do that every single month going forward. But the other thing to consider is actual inflation is real, and it can be a very dangerous thing that eats away at your spending power. But lifestyle inflation can be that double inflation that most of us don't consider or realize that we can control, because Alicia could do a lot to slow down the side of things that includes lifestyle inflation. She could reduce eating out and take more meals with her to work. She doesn't need to buy a new wardrobe because she already upgraded it. There's a lot that can be done there on the lifestyle side of things before you ever get to the point of pausing your retirement contributions. Here's a great tip if you feel like your expenses are getting out of control and the only way to get on top of your budget would be to stop contributing to your retirement. Begin to track your expenses. It can be super helpful just to get an eye on your money and figure out what's actually going to be helpful. You're going to naturally adjust. This is something that I've seen in everyone that I've recommended this to. As you start tracking your expenses and actually look at where you're spending money on your phone or computer or whatever it might be, you're going to realize areas where you can naturally cut back easily. You know how budgets can often feel so restrictive and just hard and they shame you, right? A way to get around that is to just track your expenses first. Because if you track your expenses, you're going to be able to see where your money is going, and you're going to feel empowered to help your budget out by reducing some of your expenses. You're going to feel less restricted than ever because you're going to see where your money is going, and you're going to be able to make the decision versus feeling like your budget is making all these decisions. So I highly encourage each of you listening, if you feel squeezed by inflation or lifestyle inflation, or if you're like Alicia, where you're considering pausing your retirement contributions, take the first step to track your expenses so you can understand where all that income you're bringing in is actually going out. Because I think it's going to surprise all of us that we completely underestimate how much money we're actually spending. And when we look at it, we're going to realize some quick and easy ways to get on top of that spending. But the key takeaway here from Alicia's story is do not pause your retirement contributions to fix a budgeting problem. Fix the budget first. The employer match is way too valuable to give up on what is ultimately just a spending problem. So make sure to get your budget in order, track your expenses, and then keep those retirement contributions going, because your future self will thank you. But that does it for today's case studies. Which one do you relate to the most? Leave a comment on YouTube or Spotify, and I'll be sure to reply to each and every one of them because I would love to interact with more of you listening. And that does it for today's episode. Thank you so much for listening. And today's main action item for all of us is to open up your 401k account and make sure you're getting the full employer match. And if you're not, then adjust your contribution tomorrow and make sure you're getting that full employer match. And then after that, make sure you figure out a way to set yourself up so that you can avoid ever having to pause your contributions. We learned that this is something you really don't ever want to do. And if you can set yourself up now so that you don't have to pause your retirement contributions, you're going to be all the better off for it. But even going through this process and thinking about when would I want to pause, how can I avoid having to pause, it's going to set you up in a way that you have a plan around it. And you can outline the emergencies where it may actually be okay to pause your retirement contributions. But my advice overall would be to avoid pausing, of course, and do all you can to save money in other ways and to reduce your spending in other ways. But that does it for today's topic. What did you think? Leave a comment on YouTube or Spotify and let's hear more voices and what you think about today's topic. Next week's episode is going to be a great one with a great guest, so I'm really looking forward to it, so make sure you're subscribed. And if you have any questions about making sure your retirement contributions stay consistent and so you can weather out any emergencies or potential changes in your life, please reach out and send me your questions. My email is in the show notes. And I hope today I was able to make the seemingly complex world of financial planning a little bit clearer for each of my fellow money buddies. I'm your host, Skylar Fleming, and I hope you have a great rest of your week. And hey, quick heads up. This podcast, it's meant to be educational and it's for entertainment purposes. It's not personalized financial advice for your specific situation. So before you go out and make any big money moves, make sure you chat with a qualified financial professional who knows your full financial picture.